You suppose you know the story. A poor boy, magic sap, and a beanstalk that grows into the shadows with a giant staying at the top. But what if I told you Jack and the Beanstalk is aged than the Bible, aged than the conglomerations, aged than writing itself? Because buried beneath this children's tale lies a secret. A story passed down by word of mouth for over 5,000 times. A tale of titans, of gods, and commodity far darker. Once you hear the verity behind Jack and the Beanstalk, you will no way see it the same way again. Drink back, darklings. Before we disinter the secrets of Jack and the Beanstalk, let's begin with the interpretation you suppose you know. Once upon a time, in a small cabin on the edge of a ville, there lived a widow and her only son, a boy named Jack. They were poor and with no food left to eat. The mama told Jack to take their last possession, their cow, and vend her at request. But on the way, Jack met a foreigner. Rather of tableware coins, the man offered Jack a sprinkle of sap. Magic sap, he said. Jack, being youthful and foolish, took the deal. When he returned home, his mama was furious. She threw the sap out the window and transferred Jack to bed without a suck to eat. But in the night commodity grew. A great beanstalk burst from the earth, ringing, curling, towering up into the shadows. Jack, curious and bold, began to climb. Advanced and advanced he went until the ground below dissolved in mist, and above he set up a strange land. At the top he set up a great gravestone castle. He knocked, and the door creaked open to reveal a towering woman, a giantess. Go down, she advised him. My hubby is a mammoth and he eats boys for breakfast. But seeing how empty Jack was, she took pity on him. She brought him chuck and rubbish and a coliseum of milk and let him sit by the fire. And when her hubby came home, his steps shaking the castle walls, she hid Jack in the roaster. And also came the voice, figure, fi-fo fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I will grind his bones to make my chuck. But the mammoth's woman stood establishment. There is no boy then, she said. And the mammoth, growling, ate his regale, counted his gold into bags, and fell asleep by the fire. When the castle was silent, Jack crept out, stole a bag of gold, and climbed back down the beanstalk. For a while, Jack and his mama lived happily, but eventually latterly, Jack climbed the beanstalk again. And formerly more, the mammoth's woman fed him and warmed him by the fire. And formerly more she hid him when the giant returned. This time Jack saw a hen that laid golden eggs. He awaited for the mammoth to sleep, also took the hen and escaped down the stalk. And still he was ain't finished. On the third rise, Jack stole a golden harp. A harp that sang on its own with a voice like wind through tableware bells. But as he ran, the harp cried out, "Help, master! A boy is stealing me." The mammoth awoke and gave chase. Jack climbed down the beanstalk, the golden harp wailing in his arms, its notes rising like a temptress's cry. Above him, the shadows moaned, the mammoth was coming, each step shaking the sky. As Jack reached the ground, he cried for his mama, "Bring the dismissal." She came running, dismissal in hand, and Jack began to hash. The stalk jounced, split. The mammoth was formerly half down, thundering near with every twinkle. Jack swung again and again. With one final blow, the beanstalk cracked, splintered, and tore free. The mammoth fell down through the shadows, down through the sky, down into the earth with a roar that echoed for long halls. He was killed incontinently, crushed beneath the weight of his own fall. Jack and his mama lived happily ever later. Or so the story goes. The tale you've just heard, the one about magic sap, the beanstalk, and the golden treasures, is closest to the interpretation written down by myth Joseph Jacobs in 1890. But Jack's story doesn't start there. In fact, by the time it reached the runner, it was formerly veritably old indeed. The foremost interpretation we know of in print is a parody. In 1734, a small published folder called Jack Spriggins and the Enchanted Bean was published in London. openly mocking the tale. It treated Jack as a ridiculous figure, scoffing at the idea of sap growing into the sky and laughing at the veritably notion of castles in the shadows. But then is the thing, you cannot parody commodity unless your followership formerly knows it. Which means that indeed in the 1730s, Jack and the Beanstalk must have been so familiar that it could be joked about in public print. And just a many decades laterally in 1807, a more traditional interpretation appeared. The History of Jack and the Beanstalk, published by Benjamin Tarbet. But in Tarbet's hands, the story changed. Jack was ain't just a poor boy presently. He was a righteous chastiser. A Puck tells him the giant boggled his father and stole his wealth. Suddenly, Jack's not stealing. He is restoring justice. It was a veritably puritanical move, taking a mischievous, chaotic character and reshaping him into a proper moral idol. Someone who steals not out of rapacity but justice, who kills the mammoth not for gold but for vengeance. In other words, they gave Jack a moral makeover. But before fibbers were so upset about morals. The interpretation most people know moment comes from Joseph Jacobs, a myth and serious collector of oral tales from across England. In 1890, he published Jack and the Beanstalk in his English Puck Tales collection, grounded on an interpretation he would heard told by a Mrs. Hunt. Jacob's interpretation is extensively believed to reflect the tale as it was told for generations, long before it ever made its way into print. And in that aged, purelling, there is no Puck, no vengeance, no noble backstory, just Jack, not inescapably good, but always using cunning and luck to get down with it. He is a classic trickster. The kind of folk idol who does not fight with brands, but with cleverness. And also there is that strange chant of the giant femme. I smell the blood of an Englishman. We all know the line, but many realize just how old it is. It appears in Shakespeare's King Lear, written around, and indeed also Shakespeare was quoting commodity formerly considered ancient. Pens of the time described it as an old folk minstrelsy, a line spoken by ogres and titans in traditional oral lyre. So, where did it come from? Some say it's just gibberish. Strange syllables meant to scarify children or mimic the sound of a lumbering mammoth. But in the 19th century, a Scottish antiquarian named Charles May suggested commodity foreigner. He believed the chant might come from Old Gaelic. And according to him, the words roughly restate to, behold, food, good to eat, enough to satisfy my hunger. In other words, not just a chant, but a mammoth's stalking call. There is no deficit of titans in world tradition. In the Bible, youthful David slays the towering Goliath with nothing but a sling and a gravestone. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus blinds the Cyclops Polyphemus, a one-eyed mammoth who devours men and lives in a mountain delve. In Norse myth, the gods themselves are locked in an eternal struggle with the Jotnar, ancient titans who came before the world of men. They're old, important, frequently the first occupants of the land. And maybe that is the point. Some lore began to wonder, what if the mammoth in this story was not just a monster? What if he was a memory, a folk echo of a race or lineage of people that formerly was and was defeated, demonized, turned into titans in the stories told by those who came after? And Jack might not be an idol at all. He climbs into a world that is his, steals its treasure, and kills its guardian. A colonial in a Puck tale, someone who invades, takes what he wants, and destroys what was there ahead. It sounds far brought, like myth stretching too far. But also commodity extraordinary was discovered. In 2016, experimenters set up substantiation that Jack and the Beanstalk is much aged than anyone ever imagined. Lore call it ATU 328, part of a system used to group together stories from around the world that follow the same plot pattern. Its sanction title, The Boy Who Stole the Ogre's Treasure. And then is where it gets strange. Performances of this story appear not just by England, but in places as far piecemeal as Italy, Scandinavia, India, and further. Each bone. With the same core constituents: a poor child, a monstrous guardian, and a daring theft from a world beyond the ordinary. The experimenters anatomized these stories using a system typically used to trace elaboration, like a family tree for myth. And what they set up was astonishing. Jack's tale goes back over times. A tale told long before the Bible, before the conglomerations, before writing. A story passed via word of mouth across generations, carried through migrations, wars, and centuries. And ever, incredibly, it survived. And according to those experimenters, the tale most likely began among the Proto-Indo-Europeans, a Neolithic people who lived on the vast way between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea in what is now Ukraine, southern Russia, and western Kazakhstan. They were herdsmen, rovers, fibbers. And the language they spoke would one day evolve into Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, Norse, Celtic, and so numerous further. But beyond their language, we know veritably little. They left no tabernacles, no written records, no great metropolises sculpted in gravestone. They lived during the late Gravestone Age into the early Citation Age around to 2500 BCE and were semi-nomadic, following their herds across the wide windswept champaigns. What they did leave before were burial mounds called cairns where the dead were laid to rest with grave goods, crockery, beautifiers, and munitions of status. And that's nearly all we've to prove they ever was. And that's what makes Jack and the Beanstalk so astonishing. It may be one of the last living islands to that forsaken people. A tale from a dissolved world still echoing 5,000 times on. Jack's tale may be over 5,000 times old, but he was not alone. Stories like his appear again and again throughout ancient myth. A youthful stranger, a hidden or interdicted realm, an important guardian, and commodity magical, stolen. This pattern is so ancient and so wide that lore have a name for it, the artistic idol motif. It's the idea of an enterprising figure who enters a sacred or dangerous realm, takes commodity important, and brings it back to humanity, and in doing so explains how civilization itself began. And maybe the clearest ancient resemblance to Jack is Prometheus. In Greek myth, Prometheus is a Goliath who defies the gods. He climbs to the welkin, steals fire, the godly spark of knowledge, warmth, and civilization, and gives it to humanity. He is penalized, of course, chained to a gemstone, his liver torn out day after day. But he becomes a symbol, a trickster idol, an artistic pincher, someone who dares to cross the line between mortals and the godly. Just like Jack, he climbs a beanstalk into a sky realm guarded by a mammoth. And he returns with magical treasures, a hen that lays golden eggs, a singing harp, gifts that bring substance and enchantment to the world below. We see this pattern echo away, too. In Norse tradition, Odin sneaks into the land of the Titans and steals the sacred me of poetry, a magical drink that bestows the gift of wisdom and lyre upon the world. In the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, the idol enters a interdicted timber, defeats the guardian Habra, and claims the sacred cedar wood, godly material meant only for the gods and emblematic of civilization itself. Each of these numbers defies guardians, takes commodity important, crosses into a realm not meant for mortals, and brings back a gift that changes the mortal world ever. Just like Jack, indeed the setting of Jack's adventure, the castle in the shadows, feels strangely familiar. In Greek myth, the gods live on Mount Olympus, hidden in the mist. In Norse cosmology, there is Asgard, a realm above the earth, connected to our world by a rainbow ground. And in numerous societies, there's the image of a great tree, the world tree, or axis mundi, a perpendicular structure linking the welkin, the earth, and the demi-world. And what does Jack climb? A vine, a stalk, a living ringing palace that reaches into the sky overnight. A gateway between worlds. So, yes, it's a puck tale, but it's also commodity differently. A legendary echo, one that stretches all the way back to the ancient world. But what if Jack did not just climb into another world? What if Jack failed in the night? It's not as strange as it sounds because in the ancient world, sap were no ordinary food. In Greek tradition, particularly among the Pythagoreans, sap were sacred and stressed. They believed that sap contained the souls of the dead. Their sprouting roots were said to act bitsy mortal embryos, as if little spirits were growing in the soil. Indeed, the gas they caused was allowed to be ghostly breath, substantiation of spirits leaving the body. And strangest of all, the Pythagoreans believe the bean factory itself was aground, a living link between the realm of the living and the land of the dead. So when Jack trades his family's last cow, a source of milk, food, and life, for a sprinkle of sap, he is not just making a foolish bargain. He is trading life for death. A beanstalk grows towering into the sky and Jack climbs it. But in numerous ancient belief systems, the afterlife is not down below, it's over. In Maya cosmology, the Milky Way was known as the world tree. Souls were steady to pass through it on their way to the coming world. To die was to climb. In Norse tradition, the great tree connected the worlds of the living, the dead, and the gods. In Hindu cosmology, there's the Ashvada, a sacred tree with its roots in heaven and its branches reaching over to earth. And in Siberian and Mongolian shamanic rites, the soul ascends, climbing a sacred pole or tree to reach the spirit world. Jack's beanstalk fits impeccably. An unforeseen supernatural vine reaching beyond life into the realm of the eternity. And what does he find at the top? A giant guarding a strange sphere. A golden harp that sings. A hen that lays golden eggs. An endless source of food. And in some performances, a bag of gold that no way runs out. But these aren't just magical curiosities. They're symbols. Music. Food. Eternity. Not bare riches, but the prices of the soul. And the mammoth. Maybe he is not a villain at all. Maybe he is the guardian of the dead, like Hades or Yama or the numerous shadowy numbers in myth who cover the gates of the other world. Jack steals from him. He flees. He climbs back down. And also he cuts the beanstalk. He severs the ground between the living and the dead. The trip is over. So, what kind of story is this? It may look like a puck tale, but it walks and addresses like commodity far-aged. A ritual trip, a legendary passage, a soul's rise into the afterlife and its return. It belongs to a family of myths stretching back thousands of times. Stories like Inanna descending into the Sumerian demiworld, or Orius crossing into Hades to recoup Eurydice, Dumuzi, the god who dies with the seasons and rises again. Jack climbs. He faces the guardian. He brings back commodity magical and he survives. So perhaps Jack did not burglarize a mammoth. Perhaps he set up what waits for all of us at the end of the rise. And if that unsettled you, stay until you hear what happened in Hamlin. Click to watch the nipping true story behind the Pied Piper if you dare. See you in Unborn videotape.